Hello, I'm Marcus Gover, the Chief Executive of WRAP. It's a huge pleasure to launch Textiles 2030, the voluntary agreement transforming the UK's clothing and textiles sector for the good of the planet. This is a pivotal moment for the sector. For retailers, the past year of the pandemic has been tough. We've seen some of the biggest names disappear from our high streets. The fact that you are here today, and there has been such strong support for Textiles 2030, demonstrates how the industry understands that climate change and the health of our natural world will remain humanity's biggest challenge long after the threat of COVID-19 has passed. Not that I'm implying that this is a distant problem. This is a challenge for here and now. Clothing and textiles is the UK's fourth largest contributor to climate change, after food waste, housing and transport. Textiles 2030 is an ambitious voluntary agreement designed to reduce the impact of clothes and home textiles and the effect they have on climate change in particular. It will put the UK on the path to net zero. Today, we published a roadmap for Textiles 2030. This sets out the two key elements of how we will work with businesses and other stakeholders to deliver radical change. Textiles 2030 is all about measurement to motivate and focus action, and it's all about collaboration to transform businesses to circular use of products and materials. This video sets the scene for us. Textiles 2030 is all about action. It's all about delivering results using WRAP's tried and tested target, measure, act approach. Its targets are ambitious, deliberately so. They are by 2030 to reduce the aggregate greenhouse gas footprint of new products sold by 50%, sufficient to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees C, in line with the Paris Agreement on climate change, and achieving net zero by 2050 at the latest. Also, to reduce the aggregate water footprint of new products sold by 30%. It's also time to address the amount of water the sector consumes and the impact of textiles production on water-stressed areas. The targets apply to the total quantity of products placed on the UK market each year by signatories, The baseline year is 2019. The targets are an absolute reduction in line with recommendations for science-based targets. The targets are achievable as long as members make them a core part of their business strategy, which is why, as WRAP CEO, I am calling on other CEOs to personally get behind the targets so that their businesses give them the attention that they need. But how will we achieve these targets? As you'll be aware, WRAP's work is anchored in evidence, which is why we can be confident that these targets are achievable. We've been modelling what changes will make the biggest difference. This graph shows our provisional estimate for how the carbon target can be achieved. You can see on the left that low carbon energy in the UK and international supply chains will get us a third of the way there. But to get all the way, we need to accelerate the circular use of products and materials. As you can see from the highlighted actions on the right, recycle fibres, reuse business models, and designing products for longer life could contribute half the target. Footprint modelling using our calculator tool will be critical to evaluating and prioritising signatory actions. Now, as you can tell, circularity is critical. If we are to create a truly circular UK textiles economy, we must look at the whole product life cycle. As the diagram shows, we must design products that look good for longer. We must design products to be recyclable. We must make products using recycled fibres. We must minimise the recycled production waste. We must offer customers alternatives to buying clothes through rental or subscription models, for instance. We must provide consumers with care and repair information to look after their clothes. We must make it easier for consumers to donate and buy reused items. And we must recycle more waste textiles into new fibres for the sector. As I said, the targets are ambitious, but we can reach them. What makes me so certain? The level of commitment so far, which is staggering considering we're only just launching Textiles 2030. All these signatories and supporters have already joined Textiles 2030, 65 to date. They're here because they believe in the power of collaboration. They're here because they know that together they're bigger than the sum of their parts. They're here because they want to be part of the International Textiles Action Network, which we are announcing today. They're here because they know there's no time to lose. I want to congratulate all of them for their foresight, their commitment, and their focus. And I call on the rest of the industry to join them, to join Textiles 2030, because you really cannot afford not to. We're now going to hear from DEFRA Minister Rebecca Powell MP. Unfortunately, the Minister can't be with us in person today, but she has recorded a video address for us. When DEFRA launched its waste prevention programme last month, Textiles 2030 was headlined. And we greatly appreciate DEFRA's financial support and its proposals for policy measures which will complement Textiles 2030. So let's hear what the Minister has to say.
Hello everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak today, and I'm delighted to support the formal launch of Textiles 2030. I welcome the ambition of forward-thinking businesses in developing a new voluntary agreement which aims to halve the impact of the sector by 2030 and provide the impetus for a shift to a more circular textiles industry. As Marcus has highlighted, the environmental imperative for change has never been stronger. All parts of society need to work together to support the transition to net zero and help meet wider international climate targets at this critical time for our planet. Of course, collective action to reduce the environmental footprint of clothing and textiles is not new. Action began over 8 years ago with the establishment of the Sustainable Action Clothing Plan 2020, when pioneer organisations signed up to stretching targets to reduce carbon, water and waste over the lifetime of SCAP 2020. I'm pleased to say that the water and carbon targets were actually exceeded. Undoubtedly, though, there is more to do. We want to lead the way, creating a competitive UK textiles sector where products are designed to last longer, use fewer virgin materials, can be kept in use through circular business models, and can be recycled back into new products. As part of its inquiry into sustainable fashion, the Cross-Party Environmental Audit Committee acknowledged the good work of SCAP 2020, and it recommended that the continuation of an industry-led agreement, but with wider membership encompassing large and small businesses and greater ambition. Textiles 2030 takes this into account, and it builds on the success of SCAP and embeds the importance of increasing circularity to achieve ambitious environmental targets. Designing out waste, encouraging innovation in design, and incentivising recycling are important areas, and the roadmap to circularity is an excellent tool to facilitate this. I spoke with many of you actually in February as part of the Textiles 2030 Roundtable to hear your views on what is needed to build a more innovative and resource-efficient textiles sector in the UK. And I'm encouraged that so many businesses are interested in supporting this important initiative. The impact of Textiles 2030 will depend on the active participation of all textile and clothing companies. And I'd like to congratulate the pioneer organisations who've already signed up to Textiles 2030, and will encourage as many more of you as possible to join. Whether you are in your early stages of your sustainability journey or well advanced and ready to take on perhaps a leadership role, we need everyone on board to build a more competitive, resilient and sustainable industry. So, what are the government's ambitions in this sector? In our 2018 Resources and Waste Strategy, we set out our intention to develop policies to improve the collection of unwanted clothing, improve design standards and consumer information to enable informed choices, and consult on an extended producer responsibility scheme for textiles. Since then, we've developed our landmark Environment Bill that I'm sure you've all heard about, and are seeking powers to enable us to deliver on our ambitions. Our new draft waste prevention programme towards a resource-efficient economy, published for consultation on the 18th of March, announced our plans for the textile sector. It explained that we will develop a proposal for extended producer responsibility, supported by measures to encourage better design and information, and will consult with stakeholders on options by the end of 2022. We recognise the need to take an integrated policy approach in tackling the challenges facing the sector, and will work together to design and consult on this policy framework. Textiles 2030 is a prime opportunity for the textile sector to work with government to understand how these plans would best be implemented, and we would value businesses taking part in pilot projects and sharing evidence that will inform the next stage of policy design. So we're looking forward to working together with you all on this, and I would like to personally encourage you all to join Textiles 2030 and be part of this exciting and indeed much needed transformation.
So thank you very much, Minister. It's great to have your support for this and to hear about the actions government is going to take towards achieving the aims. I'd now like to welcome Baroness Young of Hornsey, and we are really honoured that you've agreed to become an ambassador for Textiles 2030 to help us on this mission. I'd like to pass over to Baroness Young just to say a little bit more about why she's backing this and how you see the challenge. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and thank you to the Minister as well for addressing us so clearly this afternoon. I'd like first of all to say how delighted I am that I've been asked to take on this role, and I'm really looking forward to engaging with everybody to work on the ideas, the conversations, and most importantly, the actions that will move us forward at a considerably faster rate than what we've been doing so far. And it's all about collaboration on this vital initiative. You don't need me to tell you that the UK's love of clothing and homeware has far-reaching impacts for our climate, both here in the UK and elsewhere. The creative change that we need to make is immense. We need to design for durability and longevity. We need to choose fibres and closed-loop fibre options. We need to create circular business models that extend the life of clothing and homeware, combined with a collection and reprocessing infrastructure in the UK that can interact with global supply chains and markets. Hand in hand with these creative challenges are technical challenges that need to be resolved. We will need innovation and academic insights to be able to make this transition. Of course, changing systems takes effort. Personal experience of championing sustainable and ethical fashion for many years has given me a good understanding of the amount of collaboration and commitment it takes to change this complex industry for good and for the good of the people that work within that industry, no matter where they are. Our planet can't wait for us to take our time to resolve these challenges, and we will need to work together to make that change. Textiles 2030 has clearly outlined the challenge that the sector in the UK faces. The Sustainable Textiles Action, the clear vision for action and for the timescales that are needed for this change. WRAP's experience in delivering initiatives like this in this sector and also in food, plastics, construction and many other sectors besides, and their role in convening businesses for pre-competitive development activities makes Textiles 2030 a very powerful tool in adapting business practice for the planet's good. WRAP's 2020 research shows that over half of consumers recognise that the impact of clothing on the environment is severe, and that's a 35% increase since they last asked that question only 3 years ago. But citizens alone can't make these changes. Businesses need to offer sustainable choices and to lead the way. In fact, there's a role for all of us within Textiles 2030, whether we are government, retailer, recycler, reprocessor, charity, social enterprise, academic or knowledge partner, and it will take all of us working very hard together to play our part. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Baroness Young. Very inspiring words from you and telling us more about why this is so important. I'd now like to move over to Richard Swannell from WRAP. Richard is going to tell us a bit about some of the international elements of what we're talking about. I mentioned the International Textiles Action Network, but a bit more about how much bigger a picture this is really as a global challenge. So over to you, Richard.
Thank you very much indeed, Marcus. That's very kind of you. And good afternoon, everybody. It's a real pleasure to speak to you this afternoon. What I'd like to do is to talk about what we're launching today, the Textiles Action Network. And let's talk a little bit about the context. So you've heard from Baroness Young already, and indeed from Marcus and the Minister, just how important tackling clothing is. But just this one slide gives you some sort of idea of exactly the scale of the challenge we face and why we need to act. So this is some research that was done by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. And if you look at the line in the bottom, of the chart, that is the world GDP line. That's the mauve line at the bottom. The next line up is the red line, which is the actual clothing GDP. And what that shows is that we're actually consuming clothing at double the growth we're seeing in GDP. So the world is actually consuming more and more clothes per person, and actually we're keeping them for less time. So that clothing utilization, how much time, how long are we preserving? Are we repairing? Are we actually looking after our clothes? Are we actually encouraging reuse? The clothing utilization has gone down dramatically. So we're buying more and using them less. And just some key stats here. Ellen MacArthur Foundation's quoted that more than 500 billion of value is lost every single year due to clothing underutilization and a lack of recycling. And what this does is give us the scale of the challenge that we need to face, and also the need to act, the need to bring in new business models, the need to encourage more reuse, the need to actually encourage recycling and actually make the best use of every item of clothing which is produced, because otherwise there's no chance that we can get on the trajectory to net zero from this particular sector. We do absolutely need to act. So what can we do? Well, what we decided to do is to set up the Textiles Action Network. And this network is based on shared values and targets to transform the textiles industry worldwide, with, critically, the flexibility to deliver within the local context. So it sets a framework in which we can all act to reduce the environmental impact of clothing, and to innovate, and to do that within a local context. And the UK's Textiles 2030, which you've just heard about, is the trailblazer for this particular approach. And then second on the list is going to be the upcoming Danish Circular Pact 2030, which we plan to launch this summer, and will be the first national program within Europe to be developed under this global network of country-specific voluntary agreements. So this is an extremely exciting development to actually take things forward. So what's the delivery mechanism? Well, what we're trying to do here is to foster, through the network, international collaboration towards making rapid progress on climate change through circularity. So this is all about helping us put the world on the trajectory to reach net zero for the clothing sector. And the idea is that the agreements will have a long-term vision to 2030, just like Textiles 2030 has, and own domestic sustainability targets working towards those ambitious global goals. So very much working within the context, those local contexts, to make sure they're adapted to local needs. And these targets are aligned to the vision set out by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and indeed the Global Fashion Agenda's call to action. So it's very much aligned with existing international initiatives in order to drive the change that we must make if we're going to put us on the trajectory to net zero. And also, it's a practical delivery mechanism to fast track sectoral shift, to move more rapidly and respond positively to the calls of action from, as you already heard from Rebecca Power, from governments and from citizens and the investor community worldwide. So we see this as a way of sharing learning across the world that can drive more rapid progress towards delivering the ambitious goals that are set out by multiple organizations who are working in this space. And the Textile Action Network we see as a key way of driving and helping achieve those targets. We must change the way we produce and reuse and recycle recycle textiles around the world. And the Textiles Action Network will build on Textiles 2030, share best practice, and actually encourage replication and sharing around the world. So very much like you to join. Please come and join us. Follow what's happening in Denmark and actually join us in other countries around the world. And if you'd like to find out more, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I'll help and put you in touch and work with you to try and get more of the countries around the world involved in this initiative, and make Textile Action Network a key part of delivering the change that the sector needs. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you very much for that, Richard. And what Richard was describing there is exactly what has happened with our work on plastics. We set up the UK Plastics Pact 3 years ago, and now there is a network of around about 20 plastics pacts around the world, either established or starting. And it's just taking what we've done here to the rest of the world. And seeing that happen is just amazing. And we can do the same here with textiles. To round up this session, I'm now going to pass over to David Moon from RAP, who's going to tell us a bit more about what's coming this afternoon, and about how we can sort of help you to understand Textiles 2030 and how it can make a difference for you and for the planet. So over to you, David.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Moon. I lead the team at RAP that has developed Textiles 2030. So today is the culmination of 2 to 3 years of stakeholder dialogue, and also a year of intensive development. And this has given us a springboard to deliver some practical action and really major impact, as Marcus was describing. I look back this morning at the press release we issued in June 2013 for for the launch of the Sustainable Clothing Action Plan 2020 commitment. On that day, and I was there on that day, we were pleased that 1/3 of UK clothing sales had signed up. Today, I'm delighted that businesses representing nearly 60% of the sector see such collaboration as essential if we're going to achieve the climate change and water stress reductions that we're targeting. But to my mind, 60% is not enough. I think we need 80% plus. And so I would echo the previous speakers, Baroness Young, in saying, please, all of you, would you all take this seriously and come and join us? We need everyone to be on board if we're going to achieve the climate change reduction that we are all targeting. I'd like to thank all the speakers in our opening session, but also the fantastic team who've organised this event behind the scenes. Notwithstanding technical glitches, an enormous amount of work goes into a session like this, and they really deserve our praise. We've got some great sessions and some really inspiring speakers to follow this afternoon. So let's have a look at the programme. If I can just show our slide, please. So next up at 2:15 p.m. is the second plenary session. And this will introduce in more detail the Global Textiles Action Network, which Richard has just outlined. And we've got a number of international speakers to contribute to this session. This is then followed by 4 discussion sessions, which are running as 2 parallel streams. So stream 1 will consider the consequences of design for circularity. And that's followed by looking at the impact of emerging circular business models on retailing. In stream 2, this will discuss how we close the loop on textile materials and also how to achieve the Textiles 2030 carbon target by reducing so-called scope 3 greenhouse gas emissions right across the product life cycle. To attend any of these sessions, please go to the event schedule on the underlying site where you registered and locked in. So what you can do is you can navigate using the panel on the left-hand side to the sessions you want to join. Now, if you can't stay through till 4 o'clock, or if you're torn between attending parallel sessions, you'll be pleased to know that all the sessions will be recorded. They are going to be made available on the event schedule page sometime this week, and you can watch them whenever it suits you for at least 3 months after this event. So plenty of opportunity. We have got some really inspiring speakers, as you can see on screen, a real cross-section, really bringing their in-depth experience and insights to share with us what does it mean to go on the journey with Textiles 2030. So it remains for me to thank everyone who has joined this afternoon, and the next session will start at 2:15 p.m. So just time to get a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of water, if like me, you're running hoarse, and I will see you there. Thank you, everyone. Stay with us.